bottom line is, it's just horrible for Tajon. I mean, it's just gutted for the guy. And not just that, but it's such a crushing blow to Canada, even though he's not starting at this point, last couple of games. But I think he showed some little flashes last time off the bench. He's still one of the more experienced players there. He's a game breaker.
Seriously?
To me, what?
It's a poor choice of words, Sharms.
Oh, Jesus Christ. We don't know what's happened just yet. I'm sure by the time this podcast gets out, we'll have heard by Canada Soccer. It's funny, Prime, by the way. It's been a while since we've been on, it seems. Doesn't it? I'm so happy to see your faces. Again, Amy Walsh and Dan Wong, or as he's labeled himself today, Steve Chang's younger brother, Arnold. And Jimmy B. Jimmy, let's get to this Tajon thing a little bit more. And what a loss is it for the team? A player that's come off the bench the last couple of games. We thought he'd be starting every match so far. As someone that I'm sure you've seen teammates, with serious injuries in training, no less. Like how does that affect a team? Not just on the pitch tactically, but how does it affect a team?
It does in a way. I mean, you tend to get these freak accidents that happen once in a while during training sessions. And look, nobody wants to injure a teammate. Nobody's going in, 100% into tackles. I mean, you play physical, you get stuck in, but you protect one another because everybody's needed. And by the sounds of it, just sounded like a freak accident that happened to Tajon. And you could see it did affect the players. The players were upset about it because you never want to see one of your teammates getting stretched off and taken away in an ambulance after a training session. But I think the one thing that will happen is that it will bring the squad a little bit together more because they will be saying, let's do this for Tajon. He's a valuable piece to this squad, and he's well respected. The players love him. And I think you'll see them become a little bit more stronger than what they are now.
Craig, not including the Alberkovich, John Hartson incident, what's the worst training ground incident that you've seen as a footballer?
When a guy called Phil Whelan was told not to stop kicking the balls around because you're going to hit somebody in the head, and then absolutely flushes John Lyle, our manager, in the face with a ball from like 50 yards away. That was one of the best.
After being told to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Grow up.
John Lyle lost it in that East End London accent. You fucking, just fucking, you 18 carat fuck. What did it? Oh, yeah, it was priceless. It was John Lyle getting injured by a ball punted from 50 yards.
Hey, Dubs, any horrible nightmare stories?
Yeah. Cara doing her ACL in training when we were, I think, on Vancouver Island training one summer. And it's awful. Is not the sound, because sometimes, and I've been around other players in a match where they do it and you actually hear that disgusting pop. Like you hear it's an audible noise of the ACL going. Yep.
Really? Oh, God.
Yeah. Yeah. And for Cara, we didn't hear that, or at least I didn't, but it was her cries after the fact, and that stays with you, right?
Yeah.
And then I think it's the player being injured, it's the nature of the injury, but it's also the contextually what it means for the player. And I think for Cara at that point, I think that was her second time doing it, and I remember other players coming back from injuries, whether it was, like an Achilles, something devastating, or a series of niggles, and they could never really seem to get fully fit again. And then going down with something and you don't really know what it is, but based on reactions, you usually do. And with Cara, we knew it was bad, even though we didn't know the nature of it at the time. So that really weighs heavily on a team. And it's almost like you're going through the grief immediately. Of your teammate and the potential for their career, or just in that moment, whether it's, facing a team in a friendly, if you're in a preparatory camp or something like that. And it does take a little bit out of you, and it will become something that they can rally around. And, you heard Alistair Johnston talking about doing it for Tajon and all that sort of stuff, but it leaves marks in a sense on these players, because you really feel like you it causes you to not reevaluate your position as a player, but it causes you to, I think, examine your place in the squad, what you're doing with your life and your career. It can cause, it really, I think, brings you back down to earth to allow you to be grateful for what you're doing. That football is fleeting and it won't always be there, but sometimes that can be a really good thing and serve to remind you of the fact that you maybe don't have as long as you think, and to really take full opportunity to seize the moment, whether that's with your national team or with your club.
Yeah. Do you know that there was one thing that always got me was a bad leg injury. Upper body, I was always fine, but it was terrifying for me to think that I could have a bad leg injury one day. And so many players that I played with that had bad leg injuries never really walked the same after that. And I remember playing a couple of games too where guys have broke their legs in a match, and the sound is horrific. It's like a pop and two like shin pads just smashing each other. It's the weirdest sound ever. And I'll never forget the one game I was playing. It was I was at Norwich, and I think we were playing Fulham, and Dixon Atuhu ended up going into this tackle. It was a 50-50, and he caught the individual, and the sound of this guy's leg breaking was terrible. And you could see like everybody just stopped right away. You just knew. And going back to what Dubs is saying, it affects you. It affects you big time. It's a horrible, horrible sound and feeling. And when you witness it, still today, the hairs on my arms stand up. I hate it.
And I think for Tajon too, I mean, he knows, like everybody else, I mean, he hasn't come on and performed at the level that we've seen him before. There seemed to be something not quite right, whether he needs to play more regular football, which he hasn't been doing, but he's at a brilliant club with Inter. But that's a pretty tough mental thing to deal with, because he has to go back to his club. He can't stay with the national team. I wouldn't expect they would allow that. So he's missing out on at least being part of that squad. And all of a sudden you're detached from it suddenly, like Amy's talking about. Like, it can be difficult. And it's difficult for the other players.
Hey, Craig, are you better off in that case as a team to kind of, I hate to say this, but let's get him back to his club, out of sight, out of mind, as opposed to having that reminder of some guy on crutches walking around training?
No, I don't think so.
That was a devil's advocate question, though. It was really
very much so, yeah. Well, it's true, though, right? I know in NFL circles, I think it is. I remember reading a book years ago about the Eagles under Buddy Ryan, and they're saying in the NFL, you get hurt, you're kind of carted away. We don't want to see you. You're not part of this team anymore, and it's ruthless that way. So I was wondering if it's the same way, but I guess football was far more human.
Well,
it'll be up to Inter as well, right? Because Inter own them, so they'll probably be saying, okay, well, let's get back and get you with our doctors right away and start the rehab. I mean, the fortunate thing, I mean, I hate to say it, but it is in the summer and it's the off season, so he'll have time to get himself back, and he should be able to get a good preseason, probably 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and he'll be back. But rather than him breaking a leg in the middle of the season, then you're done for that whole season. So I think the timing was probably better.
You got to remember, Jimmy, I mean, we're already into July. This is when we go back for preseason. These guys haven't finished last season yet. The ones that are playing international football, Euros, Copa, they're still like going and going. They're hitting 70, 72 games, 75 games in a season here. Yeah. Might be one of the reasons why we've seen some of the football we have.
I wanted to just before we move on and talk about like the footballing implications and like the business side of it, because that's very much what you're edging into there, where you're like inter-own Tajon. So like you're taken care of, you're going to be well surrounded, but that's sort of the nature of a footballer's life too, is like that's where his bread's buttered, and they want him, they've invested in him, they want him back under their care. But like going back to like that feeling in the club, and Sharms, what you said about the NFL and kind of the out of sight, out of mind aspect of carting an injured player away, you have to walk that line really, I think, carefully, because you want it to be galvanizing, but you don't want it to be too raw either. So like that feeling where you hear that noise, it leaves you feeling exposed, because it really taps into that raw kind of visceral, almost primal response of a human. So not only the empathy that you feel for your teammate, because you think like that, because selfishly you're like, fuck, what if that happened to me? Like, yes, you feel for your teammate, but it also causes you to not take for granted what you're doing. But it's even like in the Euros, looking at Soboslai's reaction, like to go and grab the stretcher for his teammate who had been knocked out on his feet, right? Like it really taps into that very primal response that we have as humans, like fight or flight. So for some players, it like immediately will be like rallying. So they'll be like, let's fucking do it for Tajon. And like it's a real motivating factor. But for other players, and I'm not pointing any fingers here, but it's just the nature of being humans, because that's what we're dealing with, right? We're footballers, but you're human beings. They could have a response where they become very closed and like want like avoidance almost. So like it's important that the technical staff and the people there, whether they have somebody in charge of mental performance, are talking about it and like what are you feeling right now, and like what do you think that means in terms of your performance? I think it's really important. Obviously they're addressing it internally, but as this quarterfinal, yeah, that's what it is, right? Quarterfinal against Venezuela, as that looms and they get closer to it, it's all of the technical components, but it's also the emotional, the mental effects of this type of injury and the players' responses to it that have to be, I think, guided and taken care of before they face this opponent.
Certain ages I felt differently as well. When I was really young, it was always, no matter what happened to somebody else, that's not happening to me. You're fearless at times to a fault.
That's life in general, isn't it? Yeah. But I mean, just to clarify, we don't know what the injury is at this point. Hasn't been confirmed. It's 8:47 a.m. on Wednesday morning. We'll find out today. It seemed, well, listen, let's not speculate, but
when you say injury to a tibia, it usually means that it's broken. It's just how severely is it broken?
It's not a pulled tibia. No. Sprained the tibia, right? That's probably not what it is. Anyway, listen, our best to Tajon Buchanan, 100%. Big game, obviously, massive game coming up. Where do you rate this game? I was asked this in a radio show yesterday, and the history of Canadian soccer. Where does it rate? And I, by the way, mentioned the Gold Cup because that's just being dismissed way too much right now. First of all, you won a fucking trophy in a final of what is a major tournament. It's the Confederations tournament. That's really important. Plus, back in those days, Craig, there were strong teams at the Gold Cup, right?
Well, there was an invitational, right? We had Colombia there, where there was Peru in that tournament. There was Korea in that tournament. Yeah, and teams didn't rest players. Like more recent years, we've seen the States, even Canada, leaving some stars behind. In those days, it was full strength squads. So, okay, let's not get angry with the naivety of the Canadian sporting public, but where would you put this game right now, Jimmy? Where do you put this game as far as importance in the grand scope of Canadian soccer, men's, women's aside? They've won championships.
One of the most important games. One of the most important games that this country has played. That's for sure. An opportunity to get into the semis. It's huge, absolutely massive. 8 teams left, and we're there competing. If you get through Venezuela, obviously there's a great chance. Well, probably you are going to play Argentina next. But for me, it's a massive game. Just getting out of the group stages, getting to where we are now, it's massive for these guys. I'm genuinely very, very proud of what this team has done. I'm excited to watch them play, and I think they've got a great opportunity to beat Venezuela. And then when you go into these tournaments, you always want to get as far as you possibly can. So it's
what we're seeing here too. I've been walking around in Toronto, checking it out. The weather's been great, and I've just seen, you see the usual flags. You see all the national team flags, Portugal, Italy, all around that area. So a little Portugal, and there's Portuguese flags, and there's Canadian soccer flags, like not just Canadian flags, Canadian soccer flags. And I'm walking along, and people are watching the U.S. Uruguay game. You're watching. There's a girl playing with a number 10. I couldn't figure out the jersey. She's in her living room playing soccer in her living room. And as I'm walking along, I'm like, what were you doing in there, Craig? Craig, what were you doing in there?
Are you looking at people's windows? Like,
what? Excuse me. What jersey is that?
Large jersey.
Who's that tall man in the corner of my room?
Mommy, there's a monster outside the window.
Oh my God, I thought it was Craig Forrest.
But there's something changing that I've never seen before, and winning cures a lot of things. And I think people have been waiting for this to happen, and I think it's massive. I think it's as big as anything we've ever done. I really do. It's we're at a point here where we've never been, and as far as quality goes, and really not as an underdog story of like 2000 in the Gold Cup. This is a story of a group of players that could do something really, really special, and they're already doing something special, and they could beat Venezuela. And I don't know. If I'm on that team, I'm thinking we got every chance of going the distance. I really am. They have the capabilities of doing that. It's international football, tournament football. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
Were you hearing the whispers from Field of Dreams there? Go the distance.
Oh, I thought from the girl who was watching in the room. Like, get the fuck out of my house. Get out of my house, you creep. But Craig talks about the winning. It's also the losing and who's lost. And, for CONCACAF, we're the only ones left.
Well,
and
Panama.
U.S. Panama. I'm sorry. U.S. went out horribly, and so did Mexico. Like U.S. and their line the other day.
Beautifully.
Beautiful. Right. But Fox and their panel going on about the line being crooked and too far off for the offside goal. It was ridiculous. They've lost their heads down there. So it was
how they are.
Yeah.
Just how they are.
Well, I don't think it's
Dubs. Sorry, Wonga. Can you comment on Carly Lloyd's commentary about Canada and how we don't want to see them in the knockout rounds? Any thoughts on that comment?
I mean, as a Canadian, I love it because it means that she's paying attention to Canada, and Canada is a thorn in their side because Canada's gone through and they have not. And I think it's like the way that Wonger said that horribly, but you reframed and said beautifully. And I agree. Like the way that performance was so chaotic. There was that line drawn, and it was Pulisic telling the referee. I mean, the refereeing was a nightmare as well. But like Pulisic telling the referee to go celebrate with Uruguay and then not shaking his hand afterwards, and it's the reaction around that, and it's Lloyd also the larger narrative of her criticizing the women's team post career, and then also the men's team now for being too complacent or too comfortable. And then she could just stick with that, except she feels the need to poke the bear in Canada to say, like, they have no business going through. They've only scored the one goal. I don't know. I have no time for her, but I feel heartened that other people are agreeing with me that her face is highly punchable.
This is going down well. She got a point though. One goal in the group phase. Craig, is there a point there that Canada's a little bit fortunate to be where they're at?
Well, it's tournament football. You have to get results. You have to do what you have to do to get to the next round. It doesn't necessarily going to be pretty, as we've seen with some of the top teams in Euro, even, that haven't played particularly well. Messi hasn't played particularly well. Yeah, this is probably his last major tournament. He's not the same anymore.
Sacrilege.
Look,
Sacrilege.
Let's be honest. She's a fucking idiot.
She is.
She's a fucking idiot.
Yeah. There's something really dislikable about her.
To go on what Craig is saying, it's tournament football. It doesn't matter how you get through to the next round. You just got to get through. It's tournament football. It's not a season. You got 3 games to get out of that group. We got out of that group. You didn't get out of it. Suck it up. That's your fucking problem.
Mm-hmm.
But we got through. And
deserve has nothing to do with it, right, Jimmy?
Exactly.
Yeah. And nothing to do with it. You're right, Wonger. We should be probably talking about more of our results and performances because, look at England, look at the Germans. Some of the teams haven't played particularly well.
France,
they managed to go through the job.
Mm-hmm.
France.
Yeah. Weird tournaments, actually. I mean, we'll get to Euros, but it's been very odd that the top teams have not even come close to hitting their top stride just yet. And the team that impressed us all, Austria, are now out. So it's been an odd tournament. But back to Canada. And listen, yes, they benefited from a couple of red cards, which were red cards. I mean, come on. So they weren't questionable red cards. And yes, they've scored just the one goal. but they've had to grind through some high pressure situations, some really questionable refereeing, some really debatable negative shithousery from their opponents against teams that, you know, in the past Canada could have just rolled over against. And now they're going toe to toe with these teams. I hope Venezuela, Jimmy's going to be a more open game. They're a good team, Venezuela, 4th in CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying. They won all their games. And of course, Jefferson Soteldo, remember him from TFC? A key member of that starting 11 as well. So, and Solomon Rondon, I couldn't believe when I saw the pre-tournament squads, I couldn't believe Rondon is still playing and playing for Venezuela. But 6 goals in the group, they know how to score goals. This might be more of a footballing match, do you think?
I hope so. I hope it is a footballing match, because I didn't like the football that was played in the other couple of matches. But you know, it's not always going to be sexy football, is it? An attractive football. You've got to do whatever you have to. And Johnson said as well that if you want to play football, we'll play football. If you want to mix it up, we'll mix it up. It doesn't matter. We'll adapt to any situation. And the Chile match and the Peru match was very, very chippy. There was a lot of bad tackles and argument and pushing and fighting, and you know, you just grind those results out. But against this Venezuela side, they play decent football. And with our squad and the way that we can play attractive football as well. So I'm hoping it's more of a football match. I don't want to see that the battle and the referee blowing the whistle every 5 minutes and start. You know, I would like to see a good match of football, and I think we'll see this against Venezuela.
Yeah, the shithousery is at a different level.
Yeah,
I think
I hate it. But you have to get into it. You have to do it, right? That's the thing. You have nothing you can do except manage it. And I think that Peru game at halftime, what I'd like to have been in the dressing room when Jesse Marsh was chatting, because they came out with that mentality that, hey, they shook the hands of the players that tackled them the first, and then he shook hands with the referees. You know, all these things put you in a pretty good position when there's a bit of a benefit of the doubt, or where there's the referee. If you're argumentative with the referee, and the next time he has a chance to send you off, is more likely to do that. It's just very, very smart. And I think he had that calming influence on the players when they needed it most. And I think that that's something we haven't had before. We got caught up in it. I think the referees allow quite a bit in the CONCACAF qualifying for the World Cup. But I was always worried in the big stage that if they got involved, that somebody's going to do something stupid. That
they're going to lose the plot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've kept their heads, they've kept the composure, and I do agree with you, Forrest. You've mentioned it a number of times now that Marsh's energy and his composure on the sidelines has lent the squad or helped to support the response and the behavior on the pitch. And but I mean, we also have to look at, you know, attractive football or negative or positive football, front-footed, whatever you are just hanging on to for a result, even if you're a man up. Like all the criticism that's been levied against this team, defensively, they've looked solid. You know, they're a really cohesive bunch when they're out of possession, and that's something you couldn't necessarily say about this team just a short while ago. And it's also knowing where you are. It's navigating a tournament. It's tournament football, but it's in Copa America, right? Where we know the chaos and the nature of this tournament. And I liken it to Steve Chang. Like, who's showing up at the party? Are you at the Dog and Bear viewing a game, or are you at a box at BMO? You know, or are you at like a swanky affair? You know, it's not necessarily Steve Chang that's going to show up. That's networking Dan Wong that's going to show up. So it's maybe Canada can take a cue from our own Dan Wong.
And that Steve Chang showed up last time, though.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, I bet, yeah.
Steve Chang did show up last time at the box. He was there
true.
as well.
There were actually 5 Steve Changs.
But it's showing that line, right? Yeah, that's right.
Well, when you're playing in front of the crowd like that was a pro-Chilean crowd, and it's a lion's den, and it's hard to explain until you're in it. It doesn't translate on TV, and you just do things that emotionally that you just might not do any other time. It's really difficult conditions, and you can't underestimate and under something.
Appreciate.
Underappreciate.
Yeah.
Can't overstate.
Well, you know what? I think it's been a good education for the peripheral Canadian soccer fan, right? I've been on a few shows, and they've asked me about, you know, the craziness and the circus of these games and the referees. And this is South American football. You know, there's this, I don't know, this myth that it's just about Joga Bonita, right? In South America, beautiful, fluid, fun, exciting football. And there is an element to it. Brazil, I know that's not a false narrative, but the bottom line is South American football is nasty. It's super defensive. It's full of shithousery. It's playing on the edge, right? It's that volatile cauldron bubbling over. That's what it is. That's what's wonderful about it. That's what's terrible about it. And now we're seeing it firsthand. How would Canada do in these kind of games? Well, now we're seeing actually, okay, pretty good. Now, it would be different, right, Craig, if it was in Colombia or Uruguay, right? As much as these are good atmospheres in the States, it's not quite the same. But I still think Canada's shown enough that they would hold their own wherever they're playing.
Absolutely. Remember, I mean, you go through our squad of players and where they are actually playing and the experiences that they've had, you can see why they've got a little bit of a, you know, their shoulders are back and they're playing with some confidence. We're talking about some of the biggest clubs in the world here, some of the very best players in Europe. And the clubs that they're playing for, it's just phenomenal, really.
I was looking at Alistair Johnston again, right? And this great atmosphere in these games in Copa. I think that this guy plays in Old Firm derbies. This ain't nothing. Right?
Exactly.
There's nothing to him. He can handle this piece of cake.
Yeah.
Give me more. That image of Liam Miller, I think, wasn't he like hugging the referee or shaking the referee's hand or laughing and smiling?
Yeah.
That was awesome, right? That was great because he plays it. I love Miller, by the way. He's become my favorite player in Canada.
Can you call him and talk to him about that bad hairdo he has? That is not.
Oh, you don't like it?
No.
No,
Dubs,
why? Is it the
Dubs, you
color
agree with
or is
me?
it? No,
It's too
I'm
much.
fine with
It's
it.
Longer. How old is he? How old's Liam Miller?
I don't know. He looks like about 33, 34.
Isn't
No,
what
no,
is
he's
mid 20s?
He's 24.
You know
Yeah,
what?
but Jimmy, when Jimmy
that's
was
when you have those bad hairdos. Like,
no,
let
when
him-
Jimmy
let
had
him do it.
Jimmy.
when he had
That's
frosted tips, it wasn't so boy bandish. It was.
Oh, it was. Oh, there's a time
better
with
boy
Jimmy.
bandish.
Well, better boy bandish, sure. We're talking
I
like
think that's it.
not New Kids, but maybe NSYNC.
Yeah, I think he was in sync. Yeah, or one of those really small boy bands with like two brothers that Nick Lachey was in. 98 Degrees.
Ross,
Thompson twins.
Thompson twins.
I did have frosted tips, but it was trendy, and there wasn't a boy band look.
Oh my God. He's taking offense.
Oh, he's got a little
Oh, he doesn't-
defensive.
What was the look?
Ooh, let's find a picture. You know what? When
It actually was kind of a
Incredible,
boy band.
Wonger. It was incredible.
It actually was a little bit boy band, yeah.
we are going to a visual medium very soon, which we'll get to, and we should talk about it at some point.
Yeah,
Wonger.
it was.
But we'll be able to roll in such things like
Mhm.
vintage Jimmy shots of the frosted tips era. But no, Liam Miller, listen, would I prefer the natural hair? Sure, but I'm fine with it. I just like it. Maybe it's because I'm biased. A-Dubs, he played for Liverpool played in the Liverpool system for a couple of years. And so respect to Liam Miller for sure. Wasn't it Millar for a while? They were actually repronouncing the Millar, and now it's gone back to Miller now.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
I
it
think
was
you're
definitely.
right
We've got to get
too,
that sorted
yeah.
out. I think
Yeah,
we should
do you
make it
remember,
our.
Sorry, Sharon, was a brief period where Richie Larea, there was reframing.
Leray. Was it Leray?
No, it was even.
Larry.
Yes, that's it.
Was it Leray?
But
Yeah.
that's actually the right pronunciation. Remember, they were asking him,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just been the other way for so long. Actually, speaking of that, I saw his jersey around too. These young lads were wearing his and Davies and Laren, and they had Portuguese hats on and Italian hats. I'm like, what is going on here?
So what shirt would you buy if you're going to wear a Canadian shirt from the current squad? What shirt is it going to be?
Max
Dubs?
Crapo.
It's Max for sure. It's for Craig. Of course it is. Dubs.
He's been a fucking superhero, by the way.
Mhm.
literally saving lives. And the more.
Literally saving lives. Yeah.
Linesman goes down. Don't worry. Max is on the scene.
Yeah.
Max is on the case. For me, for a while, it was an easy and quick response because it would be Alistair. Because he played for CF Montreal and he was with the national team. I just love the way that he plays.
Yeah.
But now it might be Kone.
He's been
Did he
doing
play for
Montreal
Montreal as well?
He did.
Yeah.
He's also
Yeah.
from here.
I like the pick. He's going to be, stalwart in that midfield for years, despite losing his place to Ozo.
Or
this
Bambito.
tournament.
Lots of choices.
Bambino.
That's
I
a
like
good
the
name.
Likeable group, eh?
Yeah,
Likeable
very likable
group.
group. They haven't pissed us off just yet. They'll get there. Jimmy, who do you wear?
I'm taking Oso or Richie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I would wear a Richie shirt in a heartbeat as well.
Yeah, me
I
too.
love
Wonger?
Richie Laryea.
Wonger, what about you?
It'd be Richie. I just
Yeah.
every time he's out there, he's such a prick. It makes me smile.
Yeah, isn't it great?
He's such
His
a
eyes,
fucking
man,
shit
are just
disturber.
amazing.
One thing I
Pissed
would
off, which is all the
one
time.
thing I would say to Richie and the team is that when he gets up and he's showing that yellow card to the referee, like, you got to book this guy. You got to book this guy. I'm waiting for the referee to book him for that.
Yes, because they've meant to be cracking down on that, right?
And it was like relentless. He was like, "You got to book him. You got to book him." And
His eyes
yeah, his eyes were like, I was just like, "Don't do that. Don't do that. You're gonna get a yellow
No,
card." yourself."
all he was doing was playing the ace. He was showing at an ace. He was playing charades, and he was going, "Ref, I've got an ace, the winner."
Yeah.
Richie scares the shit out of me, doesn't he? You like, if he's coming at you, he's angry at you. Like, I'm saying, okay, well, calm down. I'll do whatever you say right now. He's quite intimidating.
And also,
I've heard he's such a lovely guy, though, right?
He's a great guy, great guy. I would love to play against him. It'd be a good battle.
Yeah.
You mean like 20 years ago, play against him? Right.
Yeah, I want to see it. No, I want to see it now.
I'd only last maybe 8 minutes.
Again, like Craig in the front room.
Greg on the
8
weekend, 8 minutes.
8 minutes.
Gone in 8
I'd
minutes.
say that's pretty good by footy
that's
prime
good.
standards, Jimmy.
Including the apologies.